I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding my breath around Emily until the morning I caught myself flinching at the sound of my own phone vibrating. It buzzed against the kitchen counter like a warning siren, and for a split second, I seriously considered ignoring it. That tiny moment of hesitation hit me harder than anything she'd ever said out loud. It meant something in my life had shifted without me noticing, and not in a good way. Most days, my routine was simple. I worked early shifts at a small neighborhood grocery store, the kind with flickering freezer lights and regulars who knew me by name. After work, I walked home to my modest apartment. Nothing fancy, just a place where I could cook dinner, flip through a thrift store paperback, and unwind. When Emily and I started dating, she seemed to fit into that quiet rhythm like she genuinely appreciated it. She'd come over after her job at the pet boarding place down the street, kick off her shoes and talk about the dogs she liked and the owners she didn't. It felt easy, but slowly, so slowly I almost missed it, her tone shifted. It started with little comments that sounded harmless at first. "You're still wearing that shirt? You could try a different haircut, you know. Something sharper. You don't mind if I rearrange your kitchen, right? It's all over the place." I told myself she was just opinionated, confident, used to taking charge at work. None of it was worth overthinking. Then it became more specific. She'd roll her eyes when I talked about my day. Not dramatically, just enough for me to catch it. She'd joke about how grocery store work wasn't real work because anyone can stock a shelf. She'd complain that my apartment felt too plain, like I wasn't trying hard enough to impress her. The comments were thin, like paper cuts, but they added up. One night she asked why I never cooked anything fancy and why I didn't push myself more. I reminded her I wasn't trying to be a chef. I just like simple meals. She sighed like I'd missed the point completely. That sigh stuck with me for days. Then came the questions. Who texted you? Why didn't you answer earlier? Why do you always seem distracted when I'm talking? I wasn't distracted. I was tired. My job wasn't glamorous, but it required energy. And honestly, sometimes her constant critiques drained me more than the frozen food aisle ever could. The real shift happened on a Saturday morning. I'd planned to spend the day cleaning my apartment and catching up on laundry, but Emily announced she was coming over to help. Help was her word. What she actually did was point out everything she thought I did wrong. "You still fold towels like that? You keep your mugs here? Why? This place would look better if you got rid of half your stuff." I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I said nothing. I kept trying to tell myself I didn't want to start a fight. I wanted peace, but peace didn't seem to matter to her. That afternoon, she asked why I didn't have any real ambition. The way she said it, soft, almost concerned, made it worse. Like she wasn't insulting me. She was diagnosing me. I stood there with a damp dish towel in my hand, staring at her, wondering when she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a project. The moment that pushed everything forward came later, when she picked up my phone without asking. She didn't even pretend she saw a notification. She just grabbed it, unlocked it, and started scrolling. My stomach dropped. "Why do you talk to your coworker this much?" she asked, frowning at a perfectly boring thread about schedule swaps and aisle restocks. I gently took the phone back. "Emily, you can't do that." She blinked like she was the one offended. "I'm just trying to understand you better. Why are you being defensive?" And something in me twisted, quietly but firmly. For the rest of the evening, I felt like a spectator in my own space, watching her rearrange my life like it all belonged to her. When she finally left, I found myself standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by the small changes she'd made. My books stacked differently, my shoes moved, my fridge reorganized. It felt like she'd left fingerprints on everything. That night, for the first time, I let myself admit something I'd been avoiding. This wasn't normal. It wasn't love. And if I didn't do something soon, I was going to lose pieces of myself I wasn't ready to give up. The shift from annoying to unsettling happened faster than I expected. Once Emily realized I wouldn't push back, she stopped pretending her comments were jokes. The softness disappeared from her voice, replaced by a steady drip of criticism that felt less accidental and more like a routine she'd settled into. And the strange thing was, she always delivered it like she was doing me a favor. One evening after work, I walked into my apartment and found her standing in the hallway with her arms crossed. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask about my day. She just pointed at a cardboard box near the door. "What's that doing here?" It was a box of canned goods my coworker had given me, extras from a food drive the store held. Nothing dramatic, but to Emily it was apparently a sign of some deeper flaw. She started in on how embarrassing it was that I'd accept charity and how if I tried harder, I wouldn't have to bring home handouts. Her words stung, not because she was right, but because I couldn't recognize the person talking to me. The woman who used to laugh at dumb jokes and bring me homemade cookies now looked at me like I was a disappointment she couldn't hide anymore. I kept trying to explain things calmly. That only made her angrier. "What are you even aiming for?" she demanded. "You're almost 30 and still doing this? You're wasting your potential." I wanted to ask her what potential she thought she saw in me. I wanted to remind her that I never pretended to be someone else when we met. But every time I opened my mouth, she bulldozed over me with new accusations of laziness, of complacency, of not caring enough about our future. Our future. She said it like it was something she alone was sculpting, while I simply existed on the side. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday night, and I'd had a long shift. We just finished unloading a late truck shipment, and my back felt like someone had wedged a crowbar under my shoulder blade. I wanted nothing more than to shower and sit in silence for maybe 10 minutes before Emily started listing the things she thought I needed to change about myself. But when I got home, she was already there, uninvited, holding a trash bag. She had gone through my bedroom. Everything was scattered. Drawers open, clothes on the bed, a shoebox of old letters dumped onto the floor. The trash bag was half filled with things she'd apparently decided I didn't need anymore. "Emily," I said slowly, "what is this?" She didn't even look guilty. "You keep so much useless stuff. I'm helping you get organized." I stepped forward and took the trash bag away from her. My hands shook, not from anger, yet, but from the sudden realization that she didn't see any boundaries she wasn't allowed to cross. "You can't go through my things," I said. "You can't just come in here and—" "I'm your girlfriend," she snapped. "I'm allowed to help you. Someone has to." Something inside me cracked. She kept talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. I just stared at the mess, at the old birthday card from my sister lying on the floor, at the photo of my late grandfather shoved under a laundry pile. She'd touched everything. She dug through pieces of my life like they were clutter. When she finally noticed I wasn't responding, she sighed dramatically. "You always get so emotional about the smallest things. This is why you never improve." And that was it. Not the yelling, not the invasion, not the trash bag full of my belongings. It was the way she said improve, like I was some half-finished project she regretted taking on. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't throw anything. I just stood in the doorway of my bedroom and felt something in me go still. In that moment, I finally understood something painfully simple. Emily wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to reshape me into something she could control, and I was done letting her. I didn't tell her that, though. Not yet. Because quietly, without blinking, without letting her see it, a new thought took root. If Emily wanted control so badly, I'd let her think she had it, just long enough for her to show everyone exactly who she really was. Then I'd walk away on my own terms. I didn't wake up the next morning with some dramatic plan for revenge. It was quieter than that, more deliberate. Kind of like finally noticing a leak in the ceiling. You don't scream, you just start watching it, figuring out how bad it really is before you fix it. With Emily, I realized the smartest thing I could do was stop defending myself and just let her talk, let her act, let her reveal every piece of who she really was, without me giving her anything to twist. She'd shown me she didn't respect boundaries, and people like that don't suddenly develop restraint. All I needed to do was step back and observe. The first part of my plan came naturally. I stopped arguing. When she criticized my clothes, I nodded. When she complained about my job, I said nothing. When she accused me of not trying hard enough, I let the silence stretch. Emily hated silence. She filled it with sharper words, louder complaints, bigger claims about everything she was supposedly fixing in my life. And the more she talked, the more obvious it became, not just to me, but to people around us. One night at the diner near my place, She snapped at me for forgetting to bring a coupon she wanted to use. Loudly. The server, a kid barely out of high school, shot me a sympathetic look. I didn't react. Emily, annoyed I wasn't feeding the fire, kept pushing. "This is why you never get ahead," she said, loud enough that a woman 2 tables over glanced our way. I quietly reached for my phone and placed it on the table, screen face up. Emily assumed I was tuning her out. I wasn't. I was recording, video, not audio, just her voice and her behavior. In my state, it was completely legal. And more importantly, I wasn't saying a word myself. Over the next week, I gathered more of the same. Not staged moments, just real ones. Real comments, real disrespect, real digs at my job, my friends, my habits. She didn't censor herself because she didn't think she needed to. When she reorganized my entire closet again, muttering insults under her breath, recorded. When she grabbed my phone to check who you're talking to and flipped through it in front of my coworker at the store, recorded. When she showed up unannounced and lectured me for 20 minutes because I didn't answer her text while I was showering, recorded. I wasn't planning to humiliate her or post anything online. That wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. What I wanted was clean, private closure, and a way to protect myself if she tried to twist the story once I finally pulled away. But I didn't stop there. The second part of the plan was letting her sabotage herself socially. Emily cared a lot about looking like the wise, put-together girlfriend who was lifting me up. So every time we were around other people, neighbors, friends, my coworkers, I let her run the show. Big mistake on her part. People noticed how she talked to me, how she corrected me, how she scolded me for tiny things like forgetting a reusable bag or taking too long to answer a question. And because I stayed calm, her behavior stood out starkly against the quiet. The turning point came at a weekend barbecue my friend Jake hosted. Simple backyard setup, hot dogs, folding chairs, kids running around with plastic cups. Emily came with me, but within 10 minutes, she started nitpicking everything. "You're eating that. Didn't you say you wanted to eat healthier? Don't stand like that. You look slouched. You're telling that story wrong. It happened like this." I watched Jake's smile tighten with every sentence. Later, he pulled me aside and said, "Man, she always like that?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Emily kept digging. She made a joke about me being unmotivated in front of a small group, and the air around us literally shifted. Someone coughed. Someone else looked away. Jake's wife muttered, "Wow," under her breath. Emily didn't notice. She was too busy talking. That night, I saved the last video recording. The next step was easy. Distance. I stopped inviting her over. I didn't initiate texts. I didn't make plans. And because she needed control more than connection, she forced every interaction harder, showing up unannounced, calling repeatedly, leaving long voice messages about how I was slipping. Every message was clear evidence. Finally, when I had enough, when I felt steady instead of scared, I put everything in place. I cleaned my apartment. I boxed up the things she'd bought that I never asked for. I changed the lock code on my door. I asked my landlord to remove her from my approved visitor list. And then I wrote a simple, quiet text. "I'm ending this. I need space and privacy. Do not come to my apartment." Predictably, she didn't listen. She showed up anyway, loud, angry, demanding to come inside so she could fix this. But when she tried to push past me, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Then I pulled out my phone and calmly told her I'd recorded every incident where she violated my boundaries. Touching my belongings, entering without permission, digging through my phone, raising her voice in public. I told her the videos were time-stamped. I told her I didn't want to escalate anything, but I would if she kept showing up uninvited. Her face drained. For once, she had nothing to say. I walked back inside, locked the door, and let her process it. For the first time in months, I felt something like quiet relief settle into my chest, and I knew the consequences were coming. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It came in small, uneven waves, quiet messages, cold silences, then sudden bursts of anger. Like Emily couldn't decide which version of herself would get me back under control. The first 3 days after I ended things were almost peaceful. She didn't come by. She didn't call. She only sent one text. We need to talk. I never responded. On the fourth day, the tone changed. A string of long messages arrived. Accusations, guilt trips, rewritten history. She said I was overreacting, that I took things the wrong way, that she was only trying to help me grow. She claimed the videos I mentioned weren't accurate because I'd provoked her, except I hadn't, and she knew it. I didn't reply to those either. When she realized the door was really closed, she switched tactics. She sent voice messages with shaky breathing, claiming she was worried about me, that I was pushing everyone away, that she'd forgive me if I apologized. The irony nearly made me laugh. Still, I stayed silent. What finally forced her to back off was simple. Other people started catching on. Jake texted me a few days after the breakup. Hey man, Emily's been messaging people about you. It's weird. I asked what she'd said. He sent a screenshot, her claiming I'd ended things out of nowhere, that I was emotionally unstable, and that she was just trying to save the relationship. But Jake wasn't stupid. He'd seen the barbecue meltdown. So had half the people Emily tried to sway. When she started pushing harder, I quietly sent Jake one of the videos. Just one. The moment at the diner where she raised her voice at me over a coupon, lecturing me like I was a child while the server stood frozen. I asked him not to show it to anyone else, just to understand the truth. His reply was immediate. Jesus, man, I'm sorry. I had no idea it was that bad. He didn't spread it around. He didn't confront her. He just stopped engaging with her at all. And slowly, so did everyone else. The more she tried to spin the story, the more isolated she looked, like someone pulling on a thread that only made the whole sweater unravel. She backed herself into a corner I didn't have to push her into. My part was done. The truth did the rest. A week later, she showed up at the grocery store during my shift, but she didn't come inside. She stood outside near the carts, staring at the sliding doors, her face tight and pale. For a moment, I thought she might try something dramatic, but she didn't. She caught sight of me through the glass, froze, and then turned around and walked straight back to her car. That was the last time I saw her. The quiet that followed wasn't dramatic or triumphant. It just felt still, like my apartment finally exhaled after holding its breath with me. I started cooking simple dinners again. I put my books back where I liked them. I refolded my towels the wrong way, my way. Small things, but they mattered. A few weeks later, Jake and his wife invited me over for another barbecue. Nothing special, just burgers and paper plates and kids running around the yard. But standing there with a plastic cup in my hand, listening to people laugh without anyone correcting the way I stood or spoke or breathed, it felt like someone had lifted a heavy coat off my shoulders. Jake nudged me at one point and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. I feel lighter. I didn't tell him about the recordings. I didn't tell him how close I'd come to losing pieces of myself to someone who wanted to shape me into something else. That part wasn't his burden. The moral for me was simple, though. Quiet, firm, and permanent. When someone chips away at who you are, piece by piece, it's not your job to become smaller so they can feel bigger. It's your job to step away, reclaim your space, and let them face the emptiness they created. Revenge didn't come from hurting her. It came from walking away intact and letting her see, maybe for the first time, that she never had the control she thought she did.